Welcome to Policy Talks. In today's talk, we have a very esteemed journalist, Mr. Richard Mahapatra. Richard has 20 plus years of experience in working with a magazine called Down to Earth. Richard has been, working in rural areas and bringing out stories which is of a human interest. At the same time, seeing how the climate connections are there. Thank you, Richard, for coming to our studio and having a conversation with us in Policy Talks.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with the kind of rural reporting that you started, 20-25 years before. You have been going to most of the districts and you're trying to bring out stories around that. How are these stories, one is bringing challenge for you to link it with the larger policy issues. Second is you have extensively traveled all across India. So what has been your experience so far?
Down to Earth remains, I think, a very rare media house that still spends money on news gathering. And we used to go to the places where even locating them in map also was difficult. We were basically reporting what we call now a biomass-based economy, which is India. So the reporting from that, which could be ultra-local reporting, but understanding a situation from the environmental or ecological sense and bringing it out, had a larger policy
implications.
I remember clearly when I reported many stories from Kalahandi, but the one story that we headlined it saying that myth of Kalahandi. That led to a direct policy things, and the Prime Minister's office, it still hosts what is called the Kalahandi Cell. And all the watershed programs water conservation programs were actually introduced in the districts.
Yeah. Another big policy impact that I see Down to Earth had was on the water harvesting, the small water harvesting, local water harvesting structures that you have documented in length and breadth of the country, and the Center for Science report, which has been path-breaking in terms of saving our springs and local water bodies. How was this, conceptualized and implemented within CSC's and Down to Earth boardroom?
So when you conceptualize a story, we saw that what exactly enabled, how these communities have been living so great way, not having facing distress for a long period of time. Then you had a turn in time and you did this. You mentioned about the water conservation one. Yes, it's called Dying Wisdom, which is still, I think, is the most comprehensive. You can call it a census of traditional water harvesting systems in the country. And personally, I can say you that in my hometown, the pond in front of me, I didn't know that was a pond and didn't know the history. After reading Dying Wisdom, I knew that was done by the prisoners, which actually they worked in that pond and swapped their sentence. And that saved that town actually from water scarcity.
But the model of Down to Earth has not been replicated much. I could see ground collection is one similar format, hasn't replicated much. So what do you think has been the challenges? If you can just tell us why we should have many more Down to Earths, but we don't have that luxury now.
So what we usually call it, our tagline was journalistic flavor, but academic rigor.
Yes.
Here, a journalist actually gets to do research and then do the reportage. So once the research is done, reportage is then mounted.
Okay.
For every data, every big things that come out of big census or surveys, we search for that human figure and report it. We go back to a village or go back to an area and report it back. And also, ideologically, you can say that I am a journalist, I am reporting, but I have these brackets within which I am going to report because that's the need of the hour. So that's how it happened. And functionally, if you come to, it's a very rigorous place. Even now also we go through that, what is called that very devilish 6-layer editorial process. So for every sentence, at least 6 editors must have gone through it. And for every assignment, there must have been backed by 3, you can say, conference of parties kind of debate going into it and bringing it out. Nowadays, hardly anybody spends money on the news gathering.
Okay.
Where down to earth, if you come to, we tentatively spend 40% of our budget on news gathering, which is unmatched. The average Indian media houses and all these things, the news gathering will be in the 7 to 8%. So we might not have those kind of also input kind of people you get now. Who is going to, as a journalist, spend time on like this? And it's, for a journalist also, it's like a difficult place.
Absolutely.
It's not like that, and how to move out of it.
True.
Then when you go out and from this magazine, and you don't have no similar things to
True.
work with. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I must tell you, we have more storytelling platforms and mediums.
So that's my next question is, how do you because see the future of environmental journalists or journalism in India, or climate journalism in India? Because what we see, and you've been telling us that the upsurge of stories and the climate linkages to environmental stories have become more sharper. How do you see this future happening in 5 years, 10 years down the line? Where should we be? Is there a match or mismatch between what is demand versus what the supply is of journalists?
If your happening is overwhelmingly climatic or environmental, you cannot ignore that.
True.
That's why the upsurge has taken place also. But at the same time, you have this planetary crisis. Now you are in a situation where the climate has become your existential threat under which you have to tell it. So rather I will say that whether you are a political journalist or a health journalist or environment journalist, anybody, we need more of them and more stories being told in context of climate change.
Yeah. When we look at India's place in terms of global negotiation, we see that India is taking a long leap of, what I would say, leadership role in terms of, galvanizing the issues of global South, which is rightly so. But at the local level, you have been pointing out that there has been mismatch in terms of what the local climate action should be like, right? So that's that kind of thing. How do you view that?
We have all the policy infrastructures. But the actions on policies. Climate change is something, as I have been repeating it always, that saying that it's a existential crisis. Everybody is a victim. All may not be the culprits. So the emergency and the kind of things we should have been doing it, that's not happening. But we have the policy infrastructures. We have a national plan, we have a state plan, we have a district plan, even panchayat. That's where they plan the most. We have, and all are related to this. So that we don't see when we report from areas, because every disaster you report, you find that this could have been done. We could have avoided this.
Very good. So just to end it, I think as a veteran journalist like you, what will be your message to young budding, people who would like to take this as a profession and trying to highlight rural reporting within that, issues of socio-political and climate angle into this? What will be your message to them? How should they go about?
My message is that every reporter who is reporting the climate crisis, particularly from the areas that we always consider the, in the margin, that the rural areas and all these things, you are a global reporter. There is nothing called global and nothing called local now.
Okay.
Climate is the most globalized local story now. So you are actually a global reporter. And we need to tell story.
So the canvas is much more wider now.
Wider.
Yeah.
So is the crisis is also much
impending. Yeah, thank you so much, Richard, and it was wonderful to have a conversation with you on this, and I look forward to more and more reporting and more new breeds of researchers and journalists coming and reporting on climate crisis and also problem solving mechanism that can be brought in. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.